Hello, everyone. So, in this particular lecture, we are going to look at some arrays, or in other words, lists in Python. We'll talk about different ways how we can initiate or initialize the array or the list, and then apply a few functionality or modify the list in Python. So let's look at the theoretical part first, and then we'll move on to the practical application in PyCharm. Okay, all right. So arrays in Python are basically just like in pseudocode, we are talking about a particular container in which different elements are basically stored, or multiple data items are basically stored, which are of the same data type. So that is very important that they are to be of the same data type. So I've got an array basically called my numbers, and in the array you can see that the index basically starts from 0, and this is how it is being stacked up. So this is the container in which the elements or the data items are basically stored, and they are of a particular data type. Similarly, I've got another array over here, which is the array of the students, and I've got some entries added to it. If you are to look at the Python code, if you are to initialize the array, you just need to name the array, which is basically the student. You put an equals to sign, and in the square brackets within the speech marks, you are going to add your elements separated by a comma. Now, all the elements are stored in the list named students. And if you are to take the output of the array, we use the print command with the name of the array in the brackets. So again, you are to initialize the array first. And after initializing, or after creating your array or the list, you can type in print and basically name of your array. So that's the basic syntax in which you initiate the list, and then you take an output of that list. Further moving on, the first modification, or let's say first feature in which we can access the elements of the array. Again, the students array is basically the same. I've considered the same elements as well. So we can directly print out the array, like we use this command. So if we do that, the output is going to be the array itself. So let me write it down. This is going to be the output of this is going to be like this, and the first is basically Fahad. Then we have Ahmad. Then we have Fiza. So if we take out the printout, or we take the output of the array or the list, it will print it like this. So up until the last element, which is Salman. So this will be the output. But if we are to, print, or let's say take an output at a specific index value, right? So we can directly print an element by giving the index number. So we only have to write down print um, the name of the array, and the index value, which is 1. So since the index basically starts from 0, if I put the index value as 1, the output will come out to be Ahmed. Or the other method is that the array is basically assigned, or that index value is assigned onto a variable, which is x in this case. So x equals to students index value 1, and then we take out the printout of x that will also output the same value, which is Ahmed. So there are two ways you can directly print it out, or you can assign the index value onto a variable and then print that variable and take the output. Now the second scenario is if you are to find the length of the array. In fact, the length basically refers to the number of elements existing within the array. So again, the array is basically considered to be the same. We have the same elements: Fahad, Ahmed, Fiza, Harun, Musa, and Salman. So in order to directly take out the output of the length function basically counts the elements, or counts the elements in the array. In the list form, it is going to count the number of elements. In the string form, if we have a string value and we apply the length function, it will count the number of characters. So if there is an array and we apply the length function, it will count the number of elements. Again, the same process. You can directly print the students. You can directly print out the students, the length of the students array or the list, by simply typing in print, and in the brackets you're going to type in length, the function applied. Please keep in mind the function is to be written as len, and then within the brackets you are just going to name your list, which is students in this scenario, and the output will come out to be 6. Why? Because the index value starts from 0. However, the number of elements are basically 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that means 6 elements. Similarly, you can also add up the length or the function applied to the array onto a variable, and that will print out the number of elements in that array. Moving on, another way of outputting your elements of the list is basically by using the loop. And over here I've used the technique for the for loop, and the syntax for the for loop is that you have to write down for, then you name the index can be I, that is basically the general term that we use. However, it can be named anything that you want in the students. Now previously in the for lecture, or the for loop lecture, I defined for I in range, right? Now this basically is referring to the list. Now list already has a range of values. Basically we are referring to all the elements of the array, which is why we don't have to specify the range. We just write down the name of the array. So for I in students, and then we put in the colon, and within the loop we type in print I. Print I basically refers to all the elements in the array. So the difference between the standard output and the output created by the loop or generated by the loop, the output in this particular case, it will not be within the square brackets. It will come out to be like this. First loop run, we get Fahad as the output, then the next index value, which is going to be 1. So that will come out to be like this. Then it will have this as the output. Then it's going to be the next in the list. Then we have Musa, and last of all we have Salman. So this is exactly the same process, just that it will come one by one. However, previously if we take the printout, or we take the output of the array, it will come in this particular format. As you can see, if we type in print students, it will be displayed like this. But if we use the loop, it will be printed in this form. Now moving on, we have the scenario of adding the element into our array. Now again, this is for the reference. On the left hand side, I've drawn the same array of students and the same entries are there. Now the question is that we are to add Usman to the array or the list. Now in Python, what do we first do? First, we are to initialize the array, which is done in the similar pattern. We type in the name of the array, and then in the square brackets, we are going to write down our elements, and they are to be enclosed in double quotation marks or speech marks. And now the function, the method through which we are to add an element to the list is basically what? You name the array, which is students dot append. Append means add it at the end of the list. And then in the brackets, you are going to specify the element that you wish to add, and it will be added at the end of the list. So last of all, we are taking a print of the array, which is print students, and then again in the similar pattern, your elements are going to be printed. We may have the single quote on each one of them, and you will get to see the output in which the element that you wanted to add is going to be added at the end of the list over here. So this is the process of adding an element to the array. Another scenario in which the examiner might ask you, or the scenario comes in the exam, is basically about removing the elements from the array. Now removing the elements from the array can be done in two types, or let's say two methods. One is basically through the index value, and one is basically about having a specific element removed from the array. Now if we are to do it through the indexed, now the question is that you are to remove Harun from the list. Now we know that Harun is actually existing on the index value 3 over here, right? So if we are to use, or remove an element from the array using the index method, again in Python, you are going to initialize your array or the list, which is by the students, similar method of initiating or initializing your list. Every element is going to be separated by a comma. Every element is going to be under the speech marks. Once the list is basically initialized, you write down the command students dot pop and then the index value, which is 3. Now again, in this particular scenario, we are considering that we are going to remove an element from the array using the index value. And once we write down students dot pop 3, that's going to basically remove whatever element is existing at the index value 3. And if we take the output, you will get to see the output like this. Again, this is going to be having a single quote with all these elements, and you will note the output will not have the index value 3, which was previously saving the element Harun, and it will be removed. So that is through which you are to remove an element using the index. Another method of removing the element is basically by the element itself. Again, the similar scenario, array of the students. Problem is again the same. You are to remove Harun from your list. First of all, you are to initialize the list. You are to type in all the elements that you want in your list. So The name of the array is again students, and in the square brackets we are going to type in all the elements separated by a comma within the speech marks. And then if we are to remove a particular element, we just write down students dot remove, and in the brackets we are going to type in the element, which is Harun. And now if we take out the output of the students array, again the output is going to be like this, and you will note that the output will not have that particular element present. So removing for a particular element. However, if we are to remove the element by the index, we use the pop command. Again, if you are to remove an element by its contents, you use the remove command. And if you are to remove an element by the index number, you are to use the pop command. I will also be sharing a document with you in which, again, different methods are present, in order to access a particular element, in order to access a particular element at an index value. So I will share that document and you can go through it and you can, experiment or practice different methods of doing the same thing by inputting a different code for it. However, the methods or the things that I've shown you, these are probably going to be the main, or let's say the targeted content for A levels. But for further practice, you can, you refer to that document as well and try out those methods. Now let's practice these all scenarios in PyCharm. First of all, we are going to use or learn how to initialize the array. So let me open up PyCharm. Okay, so we're going to exactly do exactly the same, or take the exact same array. So the array name is students, and we are to name the elements. So the elements, the first element is basically Fahad, then a comma. The next is Ahmed and then Fiza. So Ahmed, Fiza. Then we have Harun, Musa, Salman. So Harun, Musa, and Salman. So what we have done is we have initialized a list in Python, right? So this is how you do it. If I press Shift F10, that won't produce anything. Why? Because only the list is being initialized. There is no output command. So if I write down, let's say this is basically take an output of the list. So first method is that we can type in print and we can type in the name of the list. So Shift F10 and you can see that the whole array is being printed. Another method that I told you was that you can assign a variable, or you can introduce a variable and you can assign your list onto that variable, right? So that will also print the same way. Now, the second scenario is that if we are to take a printout or take an output of a specific element at specific index value. So for that, what we have to do is we can just type in print the name of the array or the list, which is students, and the square brackets, I'll write, let's say 3. Take a print out. So you can see the first print is actually of the complete array, so which is this. And then I refer to a particular element which is existing at the index value 3 to be printed out. So what we did was that we wrote print students and the index number. So if the index number over here is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, which is why we get Harun at the index value 3 being printed out. This can also be done by introducing again a variable, let's say x, and we are going to assign it with the index value is 3, and then instead of printing this thing out, we can just take a print out of this. So if we run this, it produces the same result, which is Harun. Now, moving on, the length of the array, right? So length of the array is basically how to find the length of the list which will produce the number of elements present in the array. Now, in order to find out the length of that array, what we can do is we can directly print it out. So we can type in print, and within that print, we're going to take the length function applied onto the name of the array, which is students. So in our array, we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 elements. So when we print this out, you can see this 6 is basically referring to the function applied. Again, this is one method which is done directly, or you can also assign a particular variable, assign onto that variable the function which is going to count the number of, or let's say count the number of elements in that array, and we can print that variable out. So again, if we produce it, Shift F10 to produce the output, it gives us the same result. So both methods are okay. Further moving on, if we are to print the array or the list by the loop, and for that we have used the for loop. Now again, take an output of the list using the for loop. How do you do that? Is basically for I in, and then the name of the array, colon, to end the statement. And over here we are to print what? We are to print the index values, right? We are to print the elements of the array. So if I type in students over here, right? If I take the output, what it will do, it will go from the start of the list, that is basically Fahad. So that is the I value which is at 0. Then we have 2, then we have 3, then we have 4, then we have 5, and then we have 6. So that means that this loop is going to produce the printout of the whole array 6 times. So if we type in or press Shift F10, you can see that the loop produced the whole list 6 times. Why? Because the index value is going to, start from the first element and will go up until the end of the array. So instead of typing in the name of the array over here, I would just take the print of the index value, so that it is at 0. It is going to produce Fahad, then we have Ahmed, then we have Fiza, then we have Harun, then we have Musa and Salman. So Shift F10, and then you can see that they are produced as the loop is basically initiated. As the loop runs and increments, it produces the next element in the array. So that was one case. Then we are to add an element. Okay, so let's do that first. Adding element to the list. Now, how to add it? The list is already initiated over here, right? All we need to use is the command of append. So we write the name of the array, which is students dot append. Append is basically to add the element at the end of the array. And then we put in the round brackets, and within the speech marks, we have considered the name Usman. So we type in Usman. And then again, we can take the printout of the array, right? And you will see that if I press Shift F10, you will see that the new element is being added at the end of the array. Over here, the Usman is basically being added to the array. And this is now the updated value of the array, or updated elements of the array. Then you are to remove the elements from the array. One method is of the index and one method is of the element itself. So I told you that if you are to use, if you are to remove the element through the index method, you are going to use the pop method. And if you are to remove the element by its contents, you are going to use the remove command, right? So let's look at remove element using the index. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll just type in the name of the array dot pop, and then I'm going to type in, let's say, 4. Okay, and then we take out the printout, or take the output of the array, which is students. Shift F10 to run this. Now let's see what it does. We are to look at this. However, in the previous example, we added Usman to our list, and I told you that once the element is basically added, now this initialization which we did earlier, in which we had only 6 elements, Usman is already added now, which makes the elements, or the number of the elements, to 7. But over here you can see that in line 15 we have taken out the length. This does not impact the new element added. Why? Because the instruction is basically before the element was added. So which is why at this point the length of the array is still 6. But if I write down an instruction to find out the length of the array at this point when we added the element, so length of students, like this, Shift F10, you can see after the element was being added, now the length of the array is now 7. So this adding, or this element that we added to our list, actually updated the number of elements in the list. Hence, the new value over here is basically, the new list over here is basically this, along with a new element added, which is Usman. Now we are to remove the element using the index, so students.pop 4, and then we have taken the printout, or taken the output of the list, which basically initiated Fahad, Ahmed, Fiza, Harun. Musa is not there in the list anymore, so the rest of the elements shifted back. That particular element is basically being deleted. And Musa, if you look at this, 4 basically represents what? If Fahad is 0, Ahmed is 1, Fiza is 2, Harun is 3, and then Musa is 4. So index value 4 is basically being removed, and we get the updated list now. The next method is remove the element itself, or remove the element by its contents using the remove command. Now all you need to do is students dot remove, and then in the brackets you are going to specify what you want to remove. Let's say I want to remove fizza, right? So this will look for the content. If it's present in that list, it will remove it. Again, last of all, I'll take the printout or take the output of my list, which is students, and then shift F10 to run it. So you can see that the last updated output that we have, we do not have fizza a part of the list anymore. So these were the basic functionalities: how you initialize the array, how to take an output of the array, how to take an output at a specific position at the index value, how to find the length of the array. You can also take out the output or print the list using the for loop, adding elements, finding the how many number of elements are basically there. So the length function is applied, and then we have removed from the list using the index method, and we have removed the element by itself, or the element's contents, by using the remove command. So these are the basic functionality which is going to be used in the A levels. I hope you were able to follow through and you will be able to apply all of these methods. Do practice this. Practice initiating the array, finding elements, finding the count of the elements, adding elements, removing elements using the index or the element itself. Practice it. If you have any questions, do let me know or post them as the comments. And I will also share an assignment based on, let's say, array and different functionalities which we have discussed already, so you can practice the code. Other than this, also go through the document which is going to be shared with you shortly. So you have the lists. You can skip the array module, right? So this is beyond the scope of your study. However, I've added it for my own self. So you can just practice how to initialize the array, how to add elements. We have talked about the append method. You can also talk about, you can practice the extend, the insert method, and the concatenation that you can do. So this explanation along with the code is basically written. All you need to do is follow through the code and write it down. Then we have the scenario of removing the elements using Python. So there is a remove method, pop method, delete statement, clear method, and the slice assignment. So slice is basically, if I just tell you that, for instance, if you look at this code, the array is basically being initiated by the name mylist, and then we have the elements added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is the syntax that we need to put in which I will just explain this. So it's written 1 till 3, right? So it will be starting from the element, the first element, up until 3. Up until 3 means that you will not be including the third position. So 1 till 3 means that if this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. So 1 till 3 means that is from starting index number 1, which is 2, and ending at index value 2 only. 3 is not going to be included. Just like in the for loop, the upper boundary is not included. Just like that, in the slice function, the upper boundary is not included. So keep that in mind, and if you take the output, the result generated is going to be 1, 4, and 5. Do practice this, might come in handy for the exam purpose. Then the last scenario, how to find elements, is through the indexing. There's an operator method as well. You may use it, not necessarily just for your own sake. If you want to, try out different types of methods to find the elements. One is also the index method. We have already discussed it. There's a count, and then there is a for loop, right? So this is again a check to find an element, whether it exists in that list. So you can apply that as well. I hope you were able to understand. Again, if you have any questions, do let me know, and do practice this, right? The only thing that will make you better is practice the scenarios which are basically discussed. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next lecture.